Hey there, let me start with the installation of Slackware Linux distro. So the first thing we need to do is actually go on the slackware.com and following the structure of their menu on the left side, we go for Get Slack, and then under Mirrors, we search for Slackware ISO images. Once we are there, we need to find the latest and greatest, which at the moment of recording is Slackware 64.15.0 version ISO file. And there you will find 4 files. You need to download the first one, which is the largest one actually, 3.5 gigabyte, and the rest is just checking for the integrity of the file. So it's security and its own integrity, and if it is what it actually representing. So you will see how to test it. But for now, it's important that you click on download link, and download will start automatically on your end. As I already have these installed or download on my machine, I will skip this part, and I just want to show you how you can actually check this, what I mentioned, integrity of the file. So if you open the, let's say, md5.md5 in the browser, you will see this hash, md5 hash, which guarantee that this ISO file, once you download, need to have the same value. So we'll copy it from here, and I will open my local terminal. So I will position myself on project where I have this ISO downloaded, and I will calculate. First of all, what I will do, I will say that md5 sum txt, let's say, is this one. Just to have it on my machine, and then I will calculate the md5 sum of the Slackware ISO. Once this process is done, the value of the md checksum should be the same as in the our md5 sum txt. So as you can see, as you can compare here, both of them are exactly the same. This guarantee to us that image we downloaded is not tampered down the road, and it's not manipulated, and it's representing what is said on the site. I would recommend to you that you always, as a system administrator, checking this md sum for files, especially for the exe files on the Windows machines, just to be sure about that integrity. So we can continue from here. I will minimize this part, and I will use my Mac built-in, or not built-in, but the software I'm using for the virtualization, which is Mac Parallels. But you can use anything from the VirtualBox or the VMware tools, or whatever you find out suitable for the virtualization. As there will be a whole course on the virtualization, I really cannot now go into details and configuration, but for now I think we just should concentrate on the Slackware itself and installation and working with the Linux itself. So I will go here for continue, and then I will pick up an image which I will use for the installation, which is Slackware. And of course it's telling me it's not able to detect an operating system. So if it's Ubuntu or something, let's say more newer, then it will recognize it immediately and offer you some predefined step for configuration. But for now I will just say it's an other or more Linux, and then other Linux, right? And we'll click on OK. Next thing, what I need to do, give it a name, Slackware Workstation, and I will customize settings before installation, because I want to set up some things like amount of the memory, CPU, and size of the disk. So here I can go for the options, and I think I do not need to touch anything special. Optimization, nothing. So hardware is the one part which I want to check. So 2 processors, that's fine. 1 G of RAM is also fine, even though it can work with 512 megabytes, but that's okay. Memory, good enough. So everything is as expected. For network, I will take the bridge network, and as I'm currently connected to my Wi-Fi adapter, I will use the bridge to the Wi-Fi. And I think, as I mentioned, additionally, I need to set up a hard disk size. So instead of 64G, I will use, let's say, 32. I can even use much less in this, quite less, right? But for now, that's fine. So it is what it is. And now I can close this tab and continue with my installation. Good. So once you start your installation of the Slackware, you will actually get the screen, which is maybe, you know, if you already was doing previous installation of some other Linux distributions, this will be a bit confusing, but that's why I choose Slackware distro to show you how it's actually simple and why it's important to understand what's happening under the hood. The other few things which Slackware will learn you down the road is that you will learn how to read documentation, which is very important, and how to ask smart questions. And also you will learn that quite of the almost everything on Linux is a file. So let me just check what this first screen telling to us, that we started the Slackware and it's actually now loaded inside the RAM memory of that machine. And all we need to do now is hit enter. We can, of course, provide some advanced parameter, but that's as well for the advanced user. So for now, it's just enough to hit the enter. Again, now we can see that actually kernel in the background extracting in the, sorry for this, I think this automatically resized, but it should stay now. It's actually popping out the messages from the kernel, and we can check them later with the dmessage tool. But for now, it's not important for us. I just wanted to say that that's perfectly normal, to not worry about that one. So you did not any mistake, that's totally fine. Here you can choose your keyboard map. I'm using by default an US keyboard, and I would also recommend to you, but if you really have an need for change keyboard, here you will hit enter and then you will select your keyboard map. I do not going to do it at this moment, and I will just continue with enter. So now you're actually in the very first step of the Slackware installation disk. What you see is here is the system offering you an small portion of the operating system which is already inside the RAM memory, and it's now from the RAM memory actually executing the rest of the commands that is necessary for the installation. And it's pretty much simple, as mentioned. All you need to do is log in into this system with root without the password, so you need to hit the enter. You need to set up partition, and you need to run the setup program for the installation, and then you are done. So here, if you hit enter, we are already a root user. And now we can use tools like cfdisk or fdisk for the setting up the partition and initializing actually the disk. I will use cfdisk, even though I really like the fdisk, and I actually will combine them here. But for real partitioning, I will use cfdisk because I found it a bit, I would say, less complicated for the people who first time getting here and trying to do installation. But we can use an fdisk first to do something like fdisk -l to list and see what is the disk offered, hard disk offered on this operating system, and which one we will use for the partitioning and installation at the end of the operating system Slackware. So here you can see that disk actually is labeled as the /dev/sda. This is the way how the naming convention, let's say, and we will speak much more about the /dev and the devices inside the Linux. So I would for now just skip details and continue with formatting this one. So I can do cfdisk. Actually, it will give me a sort of the commands and script to go through it, and then it will set up, of course, with the input and details and options to set up initially the disk. So here, as you can see, initially we have option to choose label type, or this is popularly known as a partition table. Most of the current operating system, if not, I would say all nowadays, using the GPT or guided partition table, but we will use something called DOS, and do not mix this with DOS from the Microsoft. Actually, this is something which is equal to MBR, or the master boot record, and this is an old way, of course, to creating the disk partition table, but we will use it because of its simplicity and because of the learning basic of the operating system. Once when you sort out how this is working, then it would be very easy to switch on GPT or anything else out there. So for now I will use master boot record, and as you can see now, it's I got the interface, let's say, of the cfdisk program, which offer me ability to start to formatting disk. And as you can see, there is a device with a free space, and then you have a boot flag which is not yet configured because there is no partitions created, and then we have starting, ending sectors, and size of the disk, and ID and type, which will now populate. So as you can see, you can move with the left and right arrow key on your keyboard, and you can actually invoke the command with hitting the return or the enter, right? So if you position yourself on the new and hit the enter, it will ask you how much of partition size you want to use, or the create partition. So here I will get with with the left, and then we'll say I need a 1G. That's I will use just for the boot partition, and it's ask you if it's going to be primary or extended. At the moment, we will work only with the primary partition, let's say, types in this situation on the Linux. But just for your info, the MBR partition table supports up to 4 primary, so maximum primary. As you can see there, at the bottom of the screen, it's written 0 primary, 0 extended, and then 4 free. This means that you have ability to create a 4 free primary partition, or what you can combine is 3 primary and then 1 extended, where you can extend, actually adding the more disk and stuff. But as mentioned, there will be a fully dedicated topic on top of this one. So for now, just stay with me, go for a primary. And here, as you can see now, we have in the first place, so now we can move like up, down arrows key on a keyboard. And here we can see something interesting. There is a dev SDA1, and then we have size of the 1G, and we have ID of the partition, which is 83, which is native standard Linux partition type. And I will position myself now down. I want to create an additional partition, which I will use for a as a, let's say, swap partition. And we mentioned I have 1 gigabit of RAM, so I will use a swap partition with a 2G. And then I will create another primary partition, which will be for my root system. So now I have 29G free. So I will use around the 20G for a root, again as a primary, and the rest, which is 9G, I will use for my home partition. Now, what we need to do, we need to go back on the dev SDA1, and as you can see, it's just naming like SDA1, 2, 3, 4 on top of SDA. This means partitions. And I want to make the first one a bootable. As you can see, I can position myself on bootable, hit the enter, and then this will add a flag on the first one that it is boot capable instance. And you will see later once when we choose it from the installation. The second one, we mentioned we want it to be a type of the swap. So it's not going to be ID 83, but rather 82. And you can position yourself on that very line, hit the enter once when you are on a type, go up and choose Linux swap. So now, as you can see, ID get the number 82. So we have The first partition, which will be a boot, it is an 1G. The second partition, which is 2G, double size of the current RAM. And we have two other partitions. One is dev SDA3, which will be a root, and the last one will be a home. Now, once when we are done, we need to write this into the onto the system actually, and here you need to confirm with yes. So if you just hit the epsilon, and it will just revert you back. So you really need to write yes to confirm. And once you're done with this part, you go to quit, and you're done with your partitioning part. And as I mentioned, all you need to do from this moment is just run command called setup. So with setup, you actually go through the process of the installing operating system. Here, as you can see, Slackware scan your disk, searching for the partition that is going now to be formatted. You can, of course, use help here. So you can hit on help. You can go through that one. It will give you really great information if it's necessary. But for now, we can ignore. We can skip the key map because we do not change our keyboard to nothing else than US. And now we can actually here on the third step set up a swap partition. So we can say yes. As you can see, system automatically recognized that devsda2 is a Linux swap partition because in a cfdisk we actually configure it and flag it with the type of the partition. So we can say yes, and then Slackware will now prepare your system swap space, so it needs actually to execute in the background the swap on, and that's it actually. So now you go to OK. You automatically, once when you set up the swap, go to the next screen, and now system asks you to choose the rest of the partition out there. So what this means that you just need to read the first line, which says, please select a partition from the following list to use your slash or the root Linux partition. And we mentioned our root will be dev SDA3. So do not go here and hit the first one, because then you will finish with your installation will broke, because there is quite a lot of things need to be later installed on the system. So go here, select the root partition, of course, confirm the format because this is a row partition and now they need to be formatted. And again, there will be a lot of discussion around the file system. Just keep it as ext4 for now, hit the enter, and you're okay. Now the system offer you to do the rest of your work, and now you need to do just to flag the other two or to decide where you're going to put them. So you select the first one. You say, I want to format, I want these file system type ext4, and now I want that this is a boot /boot. This is very important. You need to write it exactly as I wrote here. And we can see the first two are in use, and now the final one, which we mentioned, we want to do it for home. We just go the same procedure, hit the enter, enter, ext, and then /home. Why we having a home partition separated? That's because, I mean, that's a good practice. And just if you need to rebuild your system, if you want to use some other system, all your work will stay in a home and you can easily manipulate with that, migrate it, and so on. So here you say, okay, from the next source media selection, you choose Slackware CD DVD. If you're doing this on your native bare metal machine, this is also okay. You need to install from CD or DVD or from the USB stick, but here we're just simulating the CD DVD on a virtual machine. So we go for scan for the CD DVD, and then it's go through it. It's checking the packages. You just need to leave everything as it is. For the experts, that's fine to, disable some of these, but be aware that you never disable base Linux system, so the package of the A. And then you go for OK. So here you can choose either full or thirst, that's fine. The second one is exactly the same as the first one, but it's just displaying one line per page during the installation, which is a bit nicer to look at. Again, for the people who are doing this for the first time, it's highly recommended to do it this way, and also recommended by the Slackware experts. So here we will keep it as this, hit the enter. So this now will start an installation. It will take some time. So I will pause my recording here and then we'll get back once this is on the next step actually. Okay, once all packages are installed and deployed, we get to the point where system or installation script asks us to make USB flash boot disk, and we really do not need this at the moment, so we can just freely skip this one. And now we are on the installing LILO. So LILO is short for the Linux loader, and it's a generic bootloader, as you can see. Most of the today's Linux distributions actually using the grub tool, but we will stick with the LILO, and it's also easy to understand its syntax and how it is configured, because we will also spend some time on how actually system is booting and what's happening in these first few minutes or the seconds, I would say, once when it's took over from the BIOS to the BIOS to the kernel and so on. So here we can just hit for a simple, of course, expert type is something where you would need to go through a bit more of the custom settings, but it's not necessary. So actually Slackware will try to do automatically recognize and then install and configure LILO for you. So no need to append any kernel parameter, just continue. And as you can see, you have ability to install it on the different, let's say, locations out there on the system, but we are going to choose MBR or the master boot record on the operating system. So currently system or the Slackware installation script is scanning the system, configured and set up the LILO. That's done. This step is needed for the mouse to working properly on your machine, and especially for the old mouse like this with the two buttons out there, but that's just for the keep and compatibility to the past, what Slackware really like to do. And now you need to configure your network. Of course, you can enter your host name. If you keep it as it is, then it will just add a name, Darkstar. And here you can enter the host name you like. So you can say, I don't know, Slackware or the workstation or whatever you like, however you call it. I will call it workstation. And then domain is actually fully qualified domain. This is more like if you're working in the network environment where you need to know your names of the machines. But for the let's say workstation or the single installation for the primary machine you're going to use for your work, this is really not necessary. And for now I will just call it like lab home.lab, and I will say okay. So here, connection via VLAN, I will just say no. And now I have ability to configure actually the network for the first time. I can choose the static IP DHCP network manager for the auto configuration network using the network manager. And here is also if you're using the IP version 6, and then you can just set up simple stupid so-called loopback connection. So for now, I will stay with the network manager because we will work more on this one. And at some point, we'll probably disable network manager and then enable some other tools out there. But for now, let's leave it as it is. Click on OK. And network setup is complete. You confirm with yes. All settings are accepted. So basic network is configured. And now what you need to do is check the services actually that's going to boot up automatically during the system start. So I want to have an SSHD syslog, but let me see if there is something which we really do not need. Message bus, that's important, we need it. And then fuse for the user space library, okay, that's fine. Cron define schedule job for the later. So everything we can leave as it is, and then just click OK. And now font configuration, no need for anything special. Here you can set up your time zone actually, which is very important, I would say. But for now also I will leave it as by default, because we will find out how to set it up later. Here I will choose in Europe, and my current city is Vienna. Okay, good. And now it's asking for the default editor that you want to use for your scripts and maybe for your development. And I will go and choose Vim. as VI improved, but there will be again an dedicated topic on Vim. So here, I think almost the final step is to choose which default Windows manager you want to use. For now, I will choose the KDE or the Plasma desktop. You will see how it's easy to switch between on a Slackware, how you can change. It's not changing the theme, but really the whole Windows manager actually. No root password detected. So here we need to set up some sort of the password. This is very important to choose an strong password that you only know, long, using the special characters, using the capital and the lowercase letters and numbers and everything out there you have almost on your keyboard, as this is a probably most important user out there on your operating system, right? Once when you're done with the password configuration, you will actually get back automatically to the menu, to the first installation screen of the setup, and there is nothing else we need to do actually. All we need to do now is to go to the end, choose the exit Slackware Linux setup, hit the OK, and now it's asked us to remove the installation disk. So if you're on a bare metal machines, you will do that. Here on the virtual machines, it's actually not necessary in most cases. So here we are free to choose reboot and hit the OK. Now system sending the sigterm signal and sigkill actually signal to all the processes out there. And as you can see, for the first time, we can see that operating system is booting. It's starting from the LILO, and we can now wait for 1 or 2 minutes actually until it's booted up. But for now, I will just speed it up with hitting the enter, and I want to show you just final login, and then we'll continue actually with the next lecture for the first steps, with the baby steps in the Slackware. So here, after actually kernel extract everything what is necessary in the disk, we are on the first login screen in the terminal and probably in the bash. So we can enter our main user, which is root, and its password, which we defined during the installation. And we are in. Actually, we have an operating system, Slackware, fully working. As you can see, anytime you log in as a root user, you will get this message of the day, which is really known to be funny out there, and especially when you're working late night, then you will find some really great tricks and tips from these messages. So I can just execute ls, and I will exit from this terminal, and again I will just log in to one more time, get this message. And yeah, as you can see, it's always sort of the different message. So we are done actually with full installation. I know it took a bit than you probably expected, but that's the only way how we can really learn this in and out. So again, if you like the content, please leave a like. If you find out it's useful and you know someone who would benefit from this, please share it. Subscribe on my channel just to be informed when my next course or next lecture is out there actually. And finally, of course, this will give me an like sort of the boost if what I'm doing here is okay or not. Do you like it or not? Please leave your comments here. Let me know if you would do something differently. Let me know if I made some mistake during the execution and installation. Let me know if you have some other ideas around this, how you would like to proceed. So yeah, then till the next lecture, all the best. Log out.